That was a damn good nap, but I think it's probably about high time I start to get to work on my second proper video. Let's see here. Shit! Okay, so first off, let's just pretend it hasn't been
9
months since I last uploaded a video. Technically,
10
because of a dumb copyright claim. Sound good? Okay, cool. Well, when the news hit that the Justice League would finally be hitting the big screen in 2017, I was absolutely ecstatic. After the cancellation of Justice League Mortal in 2008 and Guillermo del Toro's Justice League Dark being sent into the same limbo the industry sends most of his projects, I thought that it was about high time that DC finally started catching up to Marvel in their cinematic universe. Granted, I will admit that it really didn't work out that way in retrospect, and only recently has DC truly found their place in the current space of comic book movies. But still, I was looking forward to the movie since I quite liked Man of Steel and Batman v Superman, I adored Wonder Woman, and hell, I'm even one of those weirdos who kind of likes Suicide Squad. So the actual proper Justice League movie couldn't disappoint, right?
This isn't the plan. No, Master Wayne. This is the team.
Did I forget to mention that when I first watched the trailer, I was taking a dump? Okay, in all seriousness, and to be completely fair, I did enjoy Justice League when I first saw it, or at the very least I enjoyed my theater-going experience then. But still, it was easily my least favorite entry in the DCEU with its clunky dialogue, forced comedy, and lack of proper dedicated focus to a lot of its characters. It definitely left a bad taste in my mouth the more and more I thought about it, especially when I learned just how much of the movie was ripped apart and stitched back together when Joss Whedon took the director's seat after Zack Snyder left due to the incredibly unfortunate passing of his daughter Autumn. Seriously, just imagine putting your heart and soul into a project before being pulled away by such an awful family tragedy, and for that project to be reworked by someone else into something else entirely with completely different artistic intentions. Honestly, it's no surprise to me that people began campaigning for the official release of the film that should have been through the release of Snyder Cut movement. Heck, I'm not even surprised that the actual Justice League stars themselves also spoke out in support of releasing the Snyder Cut. What does surprise me though, even now, is that the movement actually worked, and the film that would come to officially be known as Zack Snyder's Justice League would finally become a reality on HBO Max. I couldn't believe it. It was finally happening. It was a goddamn miracle. I know some people were cautious or skeptical about it because they thought maybe it'll still be a bad movie, and I can't say that I blame them for thinking that, but I just couldn't contain how excited I was just from the fact that it was happening. That excitement lasted for me all the way up to the actual release, where I was absolutely blown away, and every single expectation I had was met and then exceeded. Now, I could easily spend the next 10 minutes going over every individual aspect of what made this such an amazing movie. The elegantly brutal fight scenes, the gorgeous visuals and cinematography, the absolute bop of a soundtrack, the wonderful chemistry between the different members of the team. Hell, I could make an entire video about how wonderful it is that Steppenwolf is an actual character and not just a CGI Muppet of the live-action Devilman. But after thinking it over, I decided against that, because there's something else, something much more personal that I want to talk about instead. And that's the fact that this movie actually had me crying as I watched it. But before I go on, I feel I should quickly preface that I really don't cry much, especially when it comes to watching movies and such, with some of the most purported saddest movies ever made not even fazing me. I don't mean to sound like a hard-ass when I say that, I've just always been pretty emotionally distant like that. And it's not to say that I never cry, because I absolutely do. It's just that for a piece of media to make me cry, it has to really touch me in a very, very personal place. So with that in mind, what is it about Zack Snyder's Justice League that resonated with me so much? Well, to be honest, I think it's because it reminded me so much of how I perceived myself growing up and how different I thought I was. Throughout the movie, Victor struggles with his newfound body and abilities given to him by the Mother Box. He hides away in his apartment, leading the rest of the world to believe he's dead as he believes himself to have become a monster. And he shuns away his father as nothing more than the man who forced a curse onto him to keep him alive. He hates himself for what he's become, and moreover, he hates the world for making him that way. Yet despite that, even as his father tells him what dangerously incredible things he can do, he resolves to use his new powers for good, From the simple but compassionate act of lending aid to a struggling single mother, to the ultimate good of becoming a superhero and saving the world from Steppenwolf. Victor thought that there was something wrong with him, that he was broken, which in part stemmed from his belief that that's what his father thought of him, that he was just an experiment that yielded incredible but dangerous results. However, that couldn't be further from the truth, because even if he isn't the best at showing it, Silas cares about Victor. He wants him to be free and happy instead of bemoaning that he's some sort of monster because he's so much more than his powers. Even though Victor quite literally has the world's entire nuclear arsenal at his fingertips, Silas believes in him so much that he willingly sacrifices his life in order to ensure Victor and the rest of the League can find and stop Steppenwolf, because he knows his son can and will do the right thing. And even though his mother and now his father are gone, Victor still has a family with the League. People like Barry, Arthur, and Clark who have themselves struggled with their own powers and complicated relationships with their parents much like him, allowing him to see that his father did care about him, and allowing him to embrace both Silas's words of fatherly wisdom as well as himself and his body. Victor's story really speaks to me from a very personal place, having grown up with a developmental disorder and thinking about things much differently than most other people, including my parents. You see, at some point in my life, around my late high school years, I began to worry a lot about what my father thought of me. I would describe him as a real man's man. He was a mechanic who was into motorcycles and big trucks, always got his hands dirty either in the garage or out on the water, and loved going out with his friends for a tall glass of beer. I was nothing like that. I was quiet and shy, I liked to watch movies so much that I wanted to make my own, and by the time I was 9 or 10, I swore I would never drink anything alcoholic. Which, by the way, 23 now and still have never had a drop, fuck yeah. When I was a little kid, I never really took note of our differences, but as I got older, I started thinking about it more and more. I specifically thought about when my dad groaned aloud when he took me to the movie rental store, and I got excited when I found a copy of Who Framed Roger Rabbit. Or how I was much more excited to play with the controls of the docked boat pretending it was a spaceship rather than actually taking it out on the river. He unfortunately passed away in 2014, when I was only 15, and I started to despair even more over all of those old memories of being in a completely separate world from him. I was worried, scared that my dad died disappointed in me and how I turned out. But when I finally confided in my mom about those feelings, she told me they couldn't be further from the truth. Of course my dad tried showing me the stuff he liked, hoping I would like them too. That's just something that parents do. But just because I wasn't interested in loud cars and demolition derbies like he was, didn't mean that he thought any less of me. He understood that my passions lied with making my own movies and writing my own stories, and even though he didn't understand a lick of it, he was just happy to see me having fun and being myself. That story really was what I needed to hear at that point in my life. And thanks to it, I was able to fully accept myself for what I loved and what I wanted to do with my life. The reason why Zack Snyder's Justice League made me cry was because watching Victor's story brought me back to the lowest point of my life, reminding me how much I hated myself for how different I was, how I shut myself off from the rest of the world because of it, and how I blamed my own father for it. But it also reminded me of how I overcame those feelings and embraced myself for who I was. Because despite what I thought, there were people who cared about me and wanted me to succeed. It reminded me that I'm not alone, and I'm not broken. God, seriously though, I know YouTube is just a hobby for me, plus I have several other things to work on, but sheesh, 9 months? What the heck was I doing with that time? Anyway, see you in another year probably.